What would you do if the man you loved left you dying in a hospital bed, pregnant with his twins, just to take a business call? For Sarah Morrison, that nightmare was real. Abandoned at her weakest moment, betrayed in the cruelest way, until fate brought someone back from her past. A billionaire rival who once loved her in silence. What happens when the man who broke her heart walks away, and the one who truly cared steps in to raise her children? This isn't just a story of betrayal, it's a story of revenge, redemption, and rebirth. Stay with me till the end, because what Sarah becomes will leave you speechless. If this story stirs something in you, hit like, drop a comment, share it with someone who loves powerful stories, and don't forget to subscribe so you never miss the next chapter. The monitor's beep faltered, once, twice, then screamed. Sarah Morrison's eyes flew open to fluorescent lights and chaos, hands pressed against her swollen belly. Voices shouted medical terms she couldn't process through the fog of pain. 7 months pregnant with twins, and something was terribly, catastrophically wrong. Blood pressure 180 over 120 and climbing, a nurse called out. "Get Dr. Wells in here now," another voice commanded. Sarah tried to speak, but her tongue felt thick, heavy. The room tilted sideways. Where was Marcus? Her husband had been sitting in that uncomfortable vinyl chair for the past 12 hours, complaining about his back, checking his phone every 30 seconds. Where was he now? The pneumatic doors hissed open. Dr. Catherine Wells rushed in, her gray hair escaping from its usual neat bun. She'd been Sarah's obstetrician for 6 months, calm and reassuring at every appointment. She wasn't calm now. "Sarah, can you hear me?" Dr. Wells leaned close, shining a penlight in Sarah's eyes. "We need to do an emergency cesarean section. Your babies are in distress. Do you understand?" Sarah tried to nod. Her head felt disconnected from her body. "Where's her husband?" Dr. Wells demanded. "We need consent forms signed." Nurse Rebecca Torres, Sarah's best friend since college, grabbed the doctor's arm. "He stepped out, said he had to take a call. Get him back in here, we're losing time." Becca ran to the door, her sneakers squeaking on the linoleum. Sarah heard her voice in the hallway, urgent and scared. "Mr. Hartwell? Sir, we need you to sign consent forms. Your wife needs emergency surgery." Through the open door, Sarah heard her husband's voice, distant, casual. "I need to take this. It's work. Important merger call with Tokyo. Tell Sarah I'll be back in an hour, 2 hours tops." The words didn't make sense. Sarah's brain tried to process them, rearrange them into something reasonable. He couldn't be leaving. Not now. Not when she might die. Not when their babies might die. "Sir, your wife is dying. Your babies are dying." Becca's voice cracked. "She's strong. She'll be fine. St. Catherine's has the best maternal care in the state. I'll be back." The elevator dinged. His footsteps faded, then silence. Sarah's eyes found Becca's face in the doorway. Her best friend looked like she'd been slapped. Dr. Wells muttered something under her breath that might have been a curse. "Get me the hospital administrator," the doctor said quietly. "We're doing this surgery with or without him." Sarah felt tears sliding down her temples into her hair. He left. Marcus actually left. While she lay here, possibly dying, their unborn children in distress, her millionaire ex-husband-to-be had walked away for a conference call. No, not ex-husband yet, still husband, though apparently not for much longer. "Sarah," Dr. Wells gripped her hand, "I need you to stay with me. We're going to save you and those babies. Do you understand?" Sarah tried to speak. Her voice came out as a whisper. "If I don't wake up, tell my babies their mother loved them. Tell them their father—" She couldn't finish. What could she possibly say about Marcus? "You're going to wake up," Dr. Wells said firmly, "and you're going to tell them yourself. Now let's go." They wheeled her bed through the hallways at a run. Ceiling tiles blurred past. Someone put an oxygen mask over her face. The antiseptic smell mixed with something else. Fear sweat. Her own. Sarah's internal voice, usually so quiet, so willing to make excuses, finally spoke clearly. "God, I was so stupid." The signs were all there. 3 months ago, Marcus coming home smelling of perfume. Jasmine. Sarah was allergic to jasmine. She'd never worn jasmine in her life. Singapore business trip, he'd said, kissing her forehead without meeting her eyes. 6 weeks ago, their joint bank account suddenly becoming separate accounts. Just better for taxes, babe. My accountant recommended it. 2 weeks ago, his mother, Claire Hartwell, at the country club, sipping champagne and delivering poison. You've trapped my son with this pregnancy, twins. How convenient. Sarah had said nothing, just placed her hand on her swollen belly and walked away. She should have said something, should have done something, but she'd been raised to be polite, to avoid confrontation, to make herself small and quiet and accommodating. The operating room was freezing. They transferred her to a table so cold it burned against her spine. Someone inserted an epidural needle. She felt pressure but no pain. Felt everything emotionally, nothing physically. Sarah, we're going to put you under general anesthesia, Dr. Wells said, her masked face hovering above. Count backwards from 10. 10, 9, 8. Sarah's voice faded. Her last conscious thought, Marcus chose to leave. The sounds came first. Distant voices, beeping machines, someone crying. Then the smells. Antiseptic, coffee, something floral. Sarah's eyelids felt like they weighed 1,000 pounds. She forced them open. White ceiling tiles, fluorescent lights, a recovery room. The absence of weight on her belly hit her like a physical blow. My babies, she croaked. Her throat felt like sandpaper. Where are my babies? A figure moved into her line of sight. Dr. Wells, looking exhausted, dark circles under her eyes, still in surgical scrubs. They're alive, the doctor said, and Sarah sobbed with relief. In the neonatal intensive care unit, Lucas and Daniel, 3 pounds each, born fighting, just like their mother. Lucas and Daniel, the name she'd picked months ago. Marcus had shrugged when she'd shown him the list. Whatever you want, babe. Can I see them? Sarah tried to sit up. Pain lanced through her abdomen. The surgery? Right. They'd cut her open. Soon. You need to rest first. You lost a lot of blood. Dr. Wells adjusted Sarah's IV. Sarah, I need to ask. Has your husband come back? The question landed like a stone in still water. Ripples of realization spreading outward. I don't know, Sarah whispered. Dr. Wells's jaw tightened. The hospital administration is filing a report. What he did, a medical abandonment, is grounds for... Don't! Sarah closed her eyes. Please, not yet. I can't think about that yet. All right, rest now. I'll check on the boys and bring you photos. After the doctor left, Sarah lay in the dim room and tried to remember how to breathe. In, out, in, out. Such a simple thing. Why did it feel impossible? She checked her phone on the bedside table. Lock, unlock, lock. The screen showed 17 missed calls over the past week, all from unknown numbers. She'd asked Marcus about them. He'd said spam, liar. One new text message from an unknown number. She almost didn't open it. Almost. The photo loaded slowly. Marcus, on a beach, white sand, turquoise water, arms wrapped around a blonde woman in a bikini, both of them laughing, happy. The woman was young, mid-20s maybe, thin, beautiful. Everything Sarah wasn't right now, bloated and cut open and abandoned. The caption read, sorry you had to find out this way. He's mine now. V. The Maldives. Sarah recognized the resort. That's where they'd honeymooned 3 years ago, where they were supposed to go for their anniversary next month. There was no Tokyo merger call. Of course there wasn't. While Sarah had been fighting for her life, while their sons had been born premature and struggling to breathe, Marcus had been on a plane to the Maldives with his mistress. The sob that came out of Sarah didn't sound human. It sounded like something dying. The door opened. Becca rushed in, still in her scrubs from earlier. She took one look at Sarah's face and the phone in her hand. Oh, honey, oh no. He's in the Maldives, Sarah said. Her voice sounded hollow. He left me dying in an operating room and went to the Maldives with another woman. Becca took the phone, looked at the photo, and said a word that would make a sailor blush. That son of a... Her name starts with V, Vanessa probably, or Victoria, one of the associates at his firm. He mentioned a Vanessa a few months ago, said she was helping with the merger. Oh, she's helping with something, all right. Becca sat on the edge of the bed carefully. Sarah, I'm so sorry. This is beyond. I don't even have words. I knew. The words came out flat, certain. Deep down, I knew something was wrong, but I kept making excuses, kept telling myself I was being paranoid, hormonal, crazy. You're not crazy. He's a narcissistic asshole who doesn't deserve you. Sarah laughed. It hurt her incision. I'm a 30-year-old single mother of premature twins with no income, no home, and massive hospital bills I can't pay. Marcus made sure all the accounts are in his name only now. I have nothing. You have me, and you have those two baby boys who need their mama. Becca squeezed her hand. We'll figure this out. How? I'm a freelance graphic designer who hasn't worked in 7 months. I moved into Marcus's condo when we got married. I have no credit in my own name. No savings. No. The door opened again. Both women looked up. A man stood in the doorway. Tall, 6 feet at least. Dark hair slightly messed up. Wearing jeans and a cashmere sweater. Expensive but casual, like he'd been pulled from bed in a hurry. Sarah's heart stopped. Dominic? Dominic Sutherland stepped into the room, his gray eyes finding hers immediately. Hello, Sarah. Becca stood up quickly. Mr. Sutherland, what are you doing here? Sarah stared. Dominic Sutherland. She hadn't seen him in 3 years, not since the Madison Project. 6 months of working together designing the interface for his company's flagship app. He'd been kind, attentive, brought her coffee every morning. Black, the way she liked it, asked about her work like it actually mattered. Then she'd gotten engaged to Marcus, and Dominic had disappeared from her life with a quiet, congratulations, Sarah, that had sounded more like condolences. I heard about the critical case alert, Dominic said. His voice was exactly as she remembered. Deep, calm. When I saw the name Sarah Morrison, I had to check if it was you. You have alerts for critical cases? Becca asked skeptically. At 4 in the morning? I have shares in this hospital. Board notifications. Dominic's gaze hadn't left Sarah's face. Where's Hartwell? The question landed like a bomb. Sarah watched Becca and Dominic exchange a look. Some unspoken communication passing between them. Gone, Becca said finally. Important conference call. In the Maldives. With his mistress. Dominic's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. Rage, maybe, or disgust. He left you here? During emergency surgery? Apparently I was being dramatic, Sarah said. Her voice sounded strange, detached. The medical crisis was just inconveniently timed with his important merger call. There is no merger. Dominic moved closer to the bed. Hartwell's firm lost the Tokyo deal 6 weeks ago. I know because my company was the competing bid. We won. The room tilted again. Sarah grabbed the bed rail. So he lied about that too, she whispered. Of course he did. Dominic pulled up the chair that Marcus had abandoned hours ago. The vinyl was probably still warm from his millionaire ex-husband's body, except he wasn't her ex-husband yet. Just her abandoning, cheating, lying husband. I'm going to check on the babies, Becca said quietly. Give you 2 a minute. After she left, silence filled the room. Sarah studied Dominic. He'd aged well in 3 years, fine lines around his eyes, a little gray at his temples. He looked tired, but somehow more solid than Marcus ever had. More real. Why are you really here? Sarah asked. Because 3 years ago I let you walk away. I told myself I was respecting your choice. But the truth is, I was a coward. Dominic leaned forward, elbows on his knees. I should have told you then that Marcus Hartwell wasn't good enough for you. That he was the same entitled, selfish person he'd been at Princeton. That you deserve better. You went to Princeton together? Same graduating class. He was exactly the type you'd expect. Rich family, legacy admission, coasted on his name. I worked 3 jobs to pay tuition. We weren't friends. Sarah absorbed this. You didn't want me to marry him. I wanted you to be happy. If he made you happy, then I had no right to interfere. Dominic's jaw tightened. But judging by the fact that you're lying in a hospital bed alone after giving birth to his children while he's in the Maldives, I'm guessing he didn't make you happy. No, Sarah said quietly. He didn't. They sat in silence. Outside, the hospital hummed with activity, footsteps in the hallway, distant announcements over the intercom, the beep of monitoring equipment. The babies, Dominic said suddenly. May I see them? I know I have no right to ask, but yes. The word came out before Sarah could think. I haven't even seen them yet. Dr. Wells said soon, but I don't know if I can walk. Then I'll bring you photos. Dominic stood. And Sarah? I'm not going anywhere, not this time. After he left, Sarah lay back against the pillows and tried to process what had just happened. Dominic Sutherland, here, now. When Marcus should have been, but wasn't. Her phone buzzed. Another text from the unknown number. Just one word. Sorry. Sarah deleted it. Then she blocked the number. Then she deleted Marcus from her favorites, from her recent calls, from the photo on her lock screen. Small acts of self-reclamation. It wasn't much, but it was a start. Dominic returned 20 minutes later with his phone full of photos. He sat beside Sarah's bed and swiped through them slowly, giving her time to absorb each image. This is Lucas, he said softly. The nurse said he's baby A, 3 pounds, 2 ounces. He has your nose. Sarah stared at the tiny infant in the incubator. Wires and tubes everywhere. So impossibly small, but I've fighting. And this is Daniel, baby BB, 3 pounds even. He wrapped his whole hand around the nurse's finger while I was watching. Tears slid down Sarah's cheeks, not the sobbing from earlier. Just quiet tears of relief and grief and overwhelming love for 2 babies she'd held for exactly 0 minutes. They're perfect, she whispered. They are. Dominic handed her a tissue from the bedside table. The nurses say they're fighters, breathing on their own, no major complications. They just need time to grow. I need to see them in person. I need to. Sarah tried to sit up. Pain shot through her abdomen. She gasped. Easy. Dominic steadied her gently. The doctor said you lost a lot of blood. You need to rest. I need to hold my babies. I need to. Her voice broke. I'm their mother. I should have been the first person to hold them. And instead, I was unconscious, and Marcus was on a plane with his mistress, and I can't do this. I can't be a single mother to twins. I can't afford this hospital stay. I can't. Stop. Dominic's voice was firm but kind. One thing at a time. First, we get you strong enough to visit the neonatal intensive care unit. Then we worry about everything else. We? Sarah looked at him. Dominic, you don't owe me anything. You don't have to. I know I don't have to. I want to. He met her gaze steadily. Let me help, Sarah, please. Before she could answer, the door burst open. Sarah's mother-in-law swept in like a storm system. Claire Hartwell, 58 years old, impeccably dressed in Chanel despite the early hour. Her perfume arrived before she did. Gardenias, expensive and toxic. Well, Claire said, her voice dripping with disdain, you certainly made sure everyone knows about your little drama. Sarah felt Dominic tense beside her. She put a hand on his arm without thinking, a gesture that said, I've got this. Claire, now isn't the time. Oh, I think now is exactly the time. Claire positioned herself at the foot of the bed like a prosecutor. You orchestrated this entire situation, getting pregnant despite Marcus's clear reluctance. Then this convenient medical emergency right when he's closing the biggest deal of his career. There is no deal, Dominic said quietly. The merger fell through 6 weeks ago. Claire's eyes snapped to him. And who are you? Dominic Sutherland. I'm sure Marcus has mentioned me. Recognition flickered across Claire's face. Then calculation. Dominic Sutherland was worth 10 times what the Hartwell family had. Maybe more. You didn't dismiss that kind of wealth and power. Mr. Sutherland, I didn't realize you knew my daughter-in-law. We worked together before she married your son. How convenient that you're here now. Claire's implication was clear. Your daughter-in-law Averly died last night, Dominic said, his voice turning to ice. Your grandchildren were born premature and are fighting for every breath. And your son is in the Maldives with his mistress. Maybe redirect your judgment accordingly. Claire's face flushed. Marcus is dealing with a complicated divorce settlement and... We're not divorced, Sarah interrupted. We're not even separated. Legally, he's still my husband, and he abandoned me and his children. You trapped him with this pregnancy. We were trying for a baby. It was his idea. Sarah's voice strengthened. He said he wanted children. He said he wanted a family. But apparently what he actually wanted was a younger woman and a clean exit from his marriage. Those babies are Hartwells, Claire said coldly. My grandchildren. Don't think for a second you can keep them from their father's family. Their father, Sarah said clearly, is in the Maldives with his mistress. He's made his choice. Now get out of my room. Claire turned to Dominic. You should be very careful about inserting yourself into a family matter, Mr. Sutherland. This could be seen as interference in a divorce settlement. Actually, Dominic stood slowly. This could be seen as medical abandonment, spousal neglect, emotional abuse. Take your pick. And if you threaten Sarah or those babies again, you'll discover exactly how much interference a billionaire can run in a divorce settlement. The air crackled with tension. Claire was outmatched, and she knew it. She adjusted her Cartier bracelet and lifted her chin. This isn't over. Those boys are Hartwells. We'll be in touch. After she left, her perfume lingered like a warning. Sarah started shaking. Not crying, just trembling with rage and fear and exhaustion. That woman, she said through clenched teeth, has hated me since the day I met Marcus. She told him I wasn't good enough. Wrong family, wrong background, not enough money. And he let her. He always let her. She can't take the babies, Dominic said firmly. No judge would grant custody to grandparents when the mother is fit and present. But am I fit? I have no job, no income, no permanent residence. Marcus made sure all our assets are in his name only. In a custody battle, I'd lose. Not if you're married to me. The words hung in the air between them. Sarah stared at Dominic. What? I said we'd deal with things one at a time. I lied. Dominic pulled the chair closer. Let me lay this out for you. Marcus will fight for custody, not because he wants the boys, but because his mother does. And because he can't stand to lose. You're a freelancer with no current income. You moved into his condo, so you have no permanent address. The Hartwells will paint you as unstable. They'll bring up the intensive care unit incident, claim you have health issues. I almost died from eclampsia. That doesn't make me unstable. I know that. You know that, but they'll twist it. Dominic leaned forward. However, if you're married to me, you have financial stability, a home, health insurance, a two-parent household. They have no leverage. Sarah's brain struggled to process this. You want to marry me for legal strategy. I want to marry you because watching Marcus destroy you isn't something I can stand by and let happen. Not again. Again? Dominic was quiet for a long moment. 3 years ago at the Madison Project wrap party, you were engaged. Marcus showed up drunk. He made a scene. Embarrassed you in front of everyone. I watched you apologize for him, make excuses, smooth everything over. And I did nothing. I told myself it wasn't my place, that you'd made your choice. But I should have said something, done something. I won't make that mistake twice. Sarah remembered that party. Marcus had been furious that she'd spent 6 months working closely with another man. He'd shown up already 3 drinks in and accused her of having an affair with Dominic in front of everyone. She'd been mortified. She'd gone home and cried. Marcus had apologized the next day with flowers and excuses about work stress, narcissistic abuse. That's what the therapist she'd secretly seen for 3 months had called it. The cycle of criticism and love bombing, the isolation from friends, the financial control, the constant undermining disguised as concern. This is insane, Sarah said. Marry a man I haven't seen in 3 years, a man I barely know. You know I take my coffee black with 2 sugars. You know I listen when you talk about design theory. You know I remember your birthday is in October. You know I've never lied to you or made you feel small. Dominic's voice was gentle. And you know Marcus has done all of those things. You can't just marry someone to help them with a divorce settlement. People marry for worse reasons. Dominic pulled out his phone and showed her something. A calendar alert. I've had this reminder set for 3 years. Sarah's anniversary. Every year on the date you married Marcus, My phone reminds me. And every year, I check your social media, the parts that aren't private, just to make sure you're okay. That's not normal behavior, Sarah. That's the behavior of someone who's been in love with you since you explained why user interface design matters with more passion than most people have for anything. Sarah's heart hammered. You love me. I'm trying very hard not to pressure you by saying that out loud. You just said it out loud. Then yes, I love you. I have for 4 years, but this proposal isn't about my feelings. It's about protecting you and those babies from people who will hurt you just because they can. Sarah looked at the photos of her sons still on Dominic's phone. Lucas and Daniel, 3 pounds each, fighting to live. They deserved better than a custody battle, better than growing up as pawns in their grandmother's power games. If I did this, she said slowly, it would be a marriage of convenience, on paper only. Whatever terms you want. I don't love you. I barely know you anymore. I know. And I'm a mess, physically, emotionally, financially. You'd be taking on someone else's disaster. You're not a disaster. You're a survivor. Dominic's voice was firm. And those babies aren't someone else's. They're yours. If you marry me, they become mine too, in every way that matters. Sarah studied his face, looking for the trap, the hidden agenda, the moment where he'd reveal this was all some elaborate manipulation. She found nothing but sincerity. When would we do this, she asked. As soon as you're discharged. We need to move quickly before Marcus returns and files for custody. He won't come back. He's in the Maldives. He'll come back when his mother tells him to. And she'll make it about money and reputation, not the babies. But by then, you'll have legal protection. Sarah closed her eyes. Imagine saying yes. Imagine becoming Shara Sutherland. Imagined a life where she wasn't drowning, where her children had stability, where she had time to heal and rebuild. It should feel wrong. This should feel like trading one cage for another. Instead, it felt like the first real choice she'd made in 3 years. Okay, she said, let's do it. 5 days after the emergency cesarean section, Sarah was finally strong enough to visit the neonatal intensive care unit without a wheelchair. Dr. Wells had cleared her for short trips, warning her not to overdo it. Sarah ignored the warning. She needed to hold her babies. Dominic had been there every day, bringing coffee, updating her on the twins' progress, making quiet calls to lawyers and financial advisors in the hallway. He'd arranged everything for the marriage with ruthless efficiency. Judges' chambers, minimal witnesses, quick and legal. They were scheduled to marry in 2 days. Becca arrived for the morning shift and found Sarah struggling to put on real clothes instead of a hospital gown. You're not supposed to be up yet, Becca scolded, but she helped Sarah into a loose dress anyway. Nothing fit right. Sarah's body was strange and foreign, swollen in some places, empty in others. The cesarean incision pulled when she moved. I'm fine. You're not fine. You almost died. You lost enough blood for a transfusion. Your millionaire ex-husband abandoned you during a medical crisis. Nothing about this is fine. Soon-to-be ex-husband, Sarah corrected. Dominic's lawyer is filing papers today. You're really going through with the marriage? Becca asked carefully. Do I have a choice? You always have a choice, honey. Sarah sat on the edge of the bed, catching her breath. Marcus will fight for custody. Claire already threatened me. If I'm married to Dominic, I have financial stability, a home, legal protection. It's the smart choice. Is it the right choice? I don't know anymore. I thought marrying Marcus was the right choice. I thought having his babies was the right choice. I thought making myself smaller and quieter and more agreeable was the right choice. Sarah's voice cracked. Every choice I've made for 3 years has been wrong. So maybe it's time to make a choice that doesn't feel right. Maybe it's time to be strategic instead of emotional. Becca sat beside her. Dominic's a good man. I've asked around. Hospital staff love him. He's on the board but doesn't throw his weight around. Generous donations. Kind to everyone. If you're going to marry someone for financial independence and legal protection, he's probably the best option. He says he loves me. And I don't know what to do with that information. Sarah stood carefully, using Becca's arm for support. I can't love him, not right now, maybe not ever. Is it fair to marry him knowing that? He's a grown man making an informed choice. You've been honest about the terms. Becca guided Sarah toward the door. Come on, let's go to meet your boys. The neonatal intensive care unit was kept warm, almost tropical. The lights were dimmed to protect tiny, sensitive eyes. Monitors beeped softly. Nurses moved with practiced efficiency between incubators. Sarah stood outside the glass window, staring at the two isolettes labeled Baby Boy Morrison A and Baby Boy Morrison B. In 2 days, they'd be Baby Boy Sutherland. New names, new father, new life. Ready? Becca asked gently. Sarah nodded. They scrubbed their hands for the required 3 minutes. Put on gowns. Sarah's hands shook as she tied the strings. Nurse Lisa, the woman who'd been caring for the twins, smiled when they entered. There's Mama. I was wondering when you'd make it down here. I'm sorry it took so long. Honey, you almost died. You take all the time you need. Lisa gestured to the first incubator. This is Lucas. He's been doing great. Off oxygen completely yesterday, maintaining his body temperature, taking bottles like a champ. Sarah approached slowly. Lucas was so small. His skin was thin, almost translucent, but his eyes were open, dark and alert. When Sarah put her hand through the porthole and touched his tiny foot, he kicked. Hi, baby, Sarah whispered. Hi, Lucas. I'm your mama. I'm so sorry it took me so long to meet you. Lisa showed her how to position her hands for kangaroo care, skin-to-skin contact that helped premature babies regulate temperature and bonding. They lifted Lucas out carefully, managing his monitoring wires, and placed him against Sarah's chest inside her gown. He was impossibly light. 3 pounds felt like nothing and everything. Hi, my beautiful boy, Sarah said, tears streaming down her face. I love you. I love you so much. I'm sorry your daddy isn't here. I'm sorry for a lot of things, but I promise you'll always know you're loved. You'll never wonder if you matter. You'll never feel abandoned. Lucas made a small sound, not quite a cry, more like a sigh. He nestled against her chest, his tiny hand curling against her collarbone. Sarah had never felt anything like this overwhelming, all-consuming love. It was terrifying and beautiful and so much bigger than she'd imagined. Okay, Mama, Lisa said after 20 minutes. Let's give your body a break and meet Daniel. They transferred Lucas back to his incubator and repeated the process with Daniel. He was slightly smaller, a little more delicate, but when Sarah held him, he gripped her finger with surprising strength. That's what Mr. Sutherland said, Lisa commented, that Daniel has a strong grip. Dominic was here? Every day, sometimes twice a day, he sits and talks to them, reads them reports from his phone. I think they recognize his voice now. Sarah absorbed this information. Dominic had been here talking to her babies while she recovered, creating bonds, becoming their father before the paperwork made it official. He's a good man, Lisa said, echoing Becca's earlier assessment. You're lucky. Sarah wasn't sure lucky was the right word, but maybe fortunate, maybe blessed, maybe just making better choices this time. That evening, Dominic arrived with dinner from the hospital cafeteria. Sarah had been discharged to a private room, courtesy of Dominic's connections and his insistence on the best care. She was eating real food now instead of IV nutrients. Small victories. I met them, Sarah said as Dominic set up the meal. Lucas and Daniel, I held them. And they're perfect and terrifying, and I have no idea how to be a mother to twins. No one knows how to be a parent before they do it. You'll figure it out. Dominic handed her a fork. My lawyer filed the divorce papers this morning. Marcus will be served in the Maldives. How long until it's final? In this state, 6 months minimum. But we can file for emergency custody immediately based on abandonment. Combined with our marriage, you'll have primary custody before Marcus even responds to the papers. It was all so calculated, so strategic. Sarah wondered if this was how business deals felt. Trading one asset for another. Maximizing advantage. Minimizing risk. I signed the prenuptial agreement your lawyer sent, Sarah said. I don't want your money, Dominic. Just to be clear, when this marriage ends, if it ends, I'm not taking anything. The prenup protects both of us, and it includes provisions for the twins, trust funds, education, health care. They're taken care of regardless of what happens between us. You're going to put my children in your will. Our children, once the adoption is final. Dominic sat across from her. Sarah, I need you to understand something. I'm not doing this halfway. When I marry you, those boys become mine. Legally, emotionally, permanently. Even if you decide in 6 months or 6 years that this isn't working, I'm their father. That doesn't change. Sarah set down her fork. Why? Why would you do that? Take on someone else's children. Tie yourself to a woman who can't love you back. Because I remember the woman at the Madison Project who explained design theory with such passion that everyone in the room stopped to listen. Because I remember you staying late to fix a bug that no one else noticed but would have crashed the system eventually. Because I remember you bringing coffee for the whole team even though you were the contractor, not the employee. Dominic's voice was quiet but intense. That woman deserved better than Marcus Hartwell. She deserved someone who saw her brilliance and cherished it. I can be that person. Even if you never loved me back, I can be that person for you. Sarah felt something crack open in her chest. Not love, not yet, but something like hope. Okay, she whispered. Okay. The wedding took place in Judge Patricia Howard's chambers. No flowers, no music, just paperwork and legal vows. Sarah wore a borrowed dress from Becca. Navy blue, CET. Baby bone. Simple. It hung loose on her post-pregnancy body. She'd showered for the first time since the surgery that morning, and even that small act had exhausted her. Dominic wore a charcoal suit. He looked like he did in boardroom photos Sarah had Googled. Powerful, composed, successful. It was strange to think that in 5 minutes this man would be her husband. Becca and Thomas Reed, Dominic's lawyer, stood as witnesses. Judge Howard, a no-nonsense woman in her 60s, didn't waste time. This is a civil ceremony, she said briskly. Do you, Dominic James Sutherland, take Sarah Elena Morrison to be your lawfully wedded wife? I do. Do you, Sarah Elena Morrison, take Dominic James Sutherland to be your lawfully wedded husband? Sarah's mouth was dry. This was insane. Marrying a man she barely knew, trading one legal arrangement for another. But when she looked at Dominic, she saw steadiness, safety, a lifeline. I do. By the power vested in me by the state, I now pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss the bride. Dominic looked at Sarah, asking permission with his eyes. She nodded. The kiss was brief, respectful. His lips barely brushed hers, but it was gentle, and something in Sarah's chest ached because Marcus had never been gentle. Congratulations, Judge Howard said, signing the marriage certificate. I hope you both find happiness. After the ceremony, Becca hugged Sarah tightly. Call me if you need anything, day or night. I mean it. I will. Thomas Reed shook Sarah's hand formally. Welcome to the family, Mrs. Sutherland. I've filed the emergency custody paperwork. We should have a hearing within 2 weeks. Mrs. Sutherland, Sarah Elena Sutherland, a name she'd have to practice signing. Dominic's driver waited outside with a black town car. Sarah had never been in a car with a driver before. It felt surreal. Where are we going? She asked. Home. A home was a penthouse in the city's most exclusive building. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the park, marble countertops, leather furniture that probably cost more than Sarah had made in her entire freelance career. Sarah stood in the living room with her hospital discharge bag and felt impossibly small. Where should I sleep? She asked. Main bedroom is yours. I'll take the guest room. This is your home. It's our home now, even if temporarily. Dominic picked up her bag. Let me show you around. The main bedroom was larger than the entire condo Sarah had shared with Marcus. King-size bed, walk-in closet, bathroom with both a tub and a separate shower, windows with automated blackout shades. But it was the adjoining room that made Sarah's breath catch. A nursery, fully furnished, 2 cribs with matching bedding, a changing table stocked with diapers and wipes, a rocking chair positioned between the cribs, shelves with books and toys, a mobile hanging over each crib, elephants and moons. When did you do this? Sarah whispered. Yesterday, my assistant arranged it. If anything's wrong, we can change it. Sarah walked to the first crib, ran her hand along the rail. It's perfect. It's more than I could have. Dominic, I need to pay you back, eventually. for all of this. Sarah, I'm serious. The hospital bills, the lawyer fees, this furniture. I won't be a charity case. You're not charity, you're my wife. On paper, on paper, in legal documents, in the eyes of the law. Dominic set her bag on the bed. Those papers matter when Marcus comes calling. And he will come calling, Sarah. Probably soon. As if summoned, Sarah's phone buzzed. Text from Marcus. First contact in 5 days. We need to talk. This divorce is a mistake. I'm coming home. Sarah showed Dominic the message. He read it and his jaw tightened. Block him. Any communication goes through lawyers now. He's the father of my children. He's their biological donor. I'm their father. Dominic's voice was firm. You need to internalize that distinction. Marcus had his chance to be their father. He chose a beach vacation instead. Sarah blocked Marcus's number. Then she sat on the edge of the enormous bed and tried to process the past week. Emergency surgery, medical abandonment, twins in the neonatal intensive care unit, marriage to a billionaire, new name, new home, new life. I don't know how to do this, she said quietly. Any of this. Be a wife, be a mother, live in a place like this. One day at a time, 1 hour at a time, if necessary. Dominic moved toward the door. Get some rest. Doctor's orders. I'll check on the boys at the hospital and bring back photos. After he left, Sarah lay back on the bed fully clothed. The mattress was absurdly comfortable. The sheets were high thread count. Everything smelled new and expensive. She checked her phone one more time. Marcus had tried calling after she blocked him. 3 times, then a text from an unknown number. You can't keep my sons from me. Sarah turned off her phone and stared at the ceiling. Somewhere in this city, Marcus was planning his return. His mother was plotting strategy. The divorce would be ugly and expensive and exhausting. But for tonight, Sarah was safe. Her babies were safe. And that was enough. 3 days as Mrs. Dominic Sutherland, and Sarah still felt like an imposter. She moved through the penthouse like a goat, afraid to touch anything, afraid to claim space. Everything was too nice, too expensive, too much. The twins were still in the neonatal intensive care unit. Lucas was thriving, gaining weight, almost ready for discharge. Daniel was progressing more slowly, but the doctors were optimistic. Sarah visited twice a day, spending hours holding them, talking to them, trying to convince herself she could do this. Dominic had gone back to work, but kept irregular hours. He'd come home for lunch to check on Sarah. Video call from the office to share updates. He was attentive without being overbearing. Present without crowding her. It should have felt invasive. Instead, it felt like someone actually cared. On the 4th night, Sarah made a mistake. She checked Marcus's social media. He'd posted a photo. Him and Vanessa, still in the Maldives. Caption, new beginnings with this amazing woman. The comments flooded in. Congratulations. She's beautiful. You two are perfect together. No mention of twins born premature. No acknowledgement of children fighting for every breath in a hospital. Just Marcus and his perfect new life with his perfect new woman. Sarah sat in the pristine guest bathroom and felt reality crash over her. She was 29 years old, mother of twins she'd held for a cumulative 4 hours, married to a stranger out of legal necessity. Her millionaire ex-husband, except he wasn't ex yet, had moved on in less than a week. She ran the shower, cold water first, then hot. Steam filled the bathroom. She meant to undress, meant to actually shower. Instead, she sat in the tub fully clothed and let the water pour over her. The sobs came from somewhere deep. The kind of crying that didn't make sound because there was too much sound trapped inside. Her borrowed dress soaked through, her hair plastered to her face, and she cried for the woman she'd been 3 years ago who'd believed Marcus when he said he loved her. She cried for the woman who'd gotten smaller and quieter and more accommodating, thinking that's what love required. She cried for the mother who hadn't been the first person to hold her babies. She cried because narcissistic abuse had a name now, and she could finally call it what it was. Dominic's knock on the door was gentle. Sarah, are you okay? I'm fine. Her voice was mechanical. You're not fine. Can I come in? No, yes, I don't know. The door opened. Dominic took one look at her sitting in the tub, fully clothed, water cascading over her, and turned off the shower. He grabbed a towel and wrapped it around her shoulders. Come on, out of there. He helped her stand, guided her to sit on the closed toilet lid, knelt in front of her with another towel, drying her hair like she was a child. Talk to me, he said quietly. He posted a photo with her. While our babies are fighting for every breath, he's posting couple photos on social media. Sarah's voice was hollow. Everyone's congratulating him, telling him she's beautiful, that they're perfect together. No one knows. No one knows he abandoned his pregnant wife during a medical emergency. No one knows his premature sons are in the neonatal intensive care unit. He's just Marcus, starting over with someone better. Sarah, how did I not see who he really was? 3 years of marriage. How did I miss all the signs? Her voice rose. I'm supposed to be smart. I'm supposed to be good at reading people. But I married a man who made me feel worthless, and I just accepted it. I made myself smaller, quieter, more agreeable. I thought that's what love was. Dominic set down the towel and took her hands. You didn't miss the signs. You saw them. You just chose to believe his explanations instead of your instincts. That doesn't make you stupid. It makes you human. His mother said I trapped him with the pregnancy, but I didn't. We were trying. He wanted kids. He said he wanted kids. Sarah was shaking now. How many times did he lie? About the pregnancy, the merger, the business trips, the separate bank accounts, everything. How many times? The number doesn't matter. What matters is you're free now. Sarah laughed. It sounded broken. Free? I'm married to you to avoid a custody battle for babies I can't even bring home yet. I'm living in your penthouse, wearing clothes your assistant bought because nothing fits me. Using your lawyer, depending on your money. I've never been less free. Then leave. Sarah's head snapped up. What? If this feels like a PMH, leave. I'll still uncover the legal fees, still help with Marcus and the custody battle. But you don't have to stay married to me. Dominic's voice was calm, steady. I married you to give you options, Sarah. If this is not the option you want, choose differently. You do that? After everything? I'm not Marcus. I'm not going to trap you or manipulate you or make you feel obligated. Dominic met her eyes. I married you because I love you. But your freedom matters more than my feelings. If you want out, just say the word. Sarah stared at him, searching for the trap, the manipulation, the moment where he'd pull the rug out and reveal this was all a game. She found nothing but sincerity. I don't want to leave, she said finally. I don't know how to be here. I don't know how to accept help without feeling like I owe something. Marcus always made sure I knew exactly what I owed. Every dinner out, every gift, every favor. It all had a price. I don't keep score. Dominic squeezed her hands gently. You owe me nothing. Not gratitude, not affection, not anything. You're here because you need stability and I can provide it. That's the whole deal. Why? Sarah whispered. Why would you do this? You could have anyone. Why marry someone broken? You're not broken, you're rebuilding. There's a difference. Dominic stood and offered his hand. Come on, let's get you into dry clothes and something to eat. Sarah let him help her up, let him guide her to the bedroom. Let him turn around while she changed into the pajamas his assistant had bought. Soft cotton, practical, nothing sexy or uncomfortable. When she was dressed, Dominic was in the kitchen making tea. Chamomile, he said, handing her a mug. My mother swore it helped with everything from anxiety to heartbreak. Your mother sounds wise. She was. Cancer took her 5 years ago. Dominic's voice was matter of fact, but Sarah heard the pain underneath. She would have liked you, would have said you had backbone. They sat in the living room, drinking tea, looking out at the city lights. Can I ask you something? Sarah said after a while. Anything. The hospital board notification system. That's not automatic for every critical case. You'd have to set up specific alerts. Dominic was quiet. Then, I may have set up an alert for your name specifically. Why? Because 3 years ago, I let you walk away, and I told myself I was respecting your choice, being a good guy, not interfering. Dominic set down his mug. But I couldn't stop checking on you, making sure you were okay. Your social media went private 6 months before the twins. That scared me. Radio silence. So I set up alerts. Hospital, police, anything tied to your name. And when that alert came through at 2 in the morning, I drove 90 miles per hour to get there. Sarah absorbed this. You've been watching over me for 3 years. Pathetic, I know. No, it's, Sarah's voice caught. No one's ever done that before. No one's ever just cared without wanting something back. I want you to be safe, to be happy, to rebuild your life. Dominic turned to face her. If you get there and decide I'm not part of that life, I'll accept it. But until then, I'm here, however you need me. They sat in silence. Outside, the city hummed. Somewhere out there, Marcus was probably landing at the airport, rushing back to contest the divorce. His mother was probably calling lawyers. The custody battle was coming. But for tonight in this penthouse, Sarah felt something she hadn't felt in 3 years. Safe. Lucas came home first. 10 days old, 4 pounds, medically cleared. Sarah held him in the car seat while Dominic drove, terrified she'd somehow break this tiny, perfect human. You're doing fine, Dominic said for the 5th time. He's so small. What if I drop him? What if I feed him wrong? What if... Sarah, breathe. You've got this. The penthouse looked different with a baby in it. Less pristine, more alive. They'd done a dry run the night before, practicing the routine. Feeding, burping, changing, sleeping in 2-hour increments. Theory was easier than practice. Lucas woke up screaming at 2 in the morning. Sarah stumbled out of bed, her cesarean incision still tender. Dominic met her in the nursery, already warming a bottle. I've got this, Sarah said. You have work in the morning. So do you. Parenting is work. Dominic handed her the bottle. Besides, we're a team, remember? They took turns walking Lucas around the nursery. Sarah fed him. Dominic burped him. They changed his diaper together, fumbling with the tiny clothes, laughing at their own incompetence. We're terrible at this, Sarah said. We're learning. There's a difference. At 3 in the morning, with Lucas finally asleep again, they collapsed on the couch. One down, one to go, Dominic said. Daniel should be ready in a few more days. Sarah leaned her head back. Then we'll have 2 babies screaming at 2 in the morning. Can't wait. Sarah looked at him. You mean that? I do. This is everything I didn't know I wanted. Something shifted in Sarah's chest. Not love, not yet, but maybe the possibility of love. The recognition that this man beside her was genuinely good. 3 days later, Daniel came home. 4 pounds, 2 ounces, a fighter like his brother. Now the penthouse was definitely not pristine. Bottles everywhere, burp cloths on every surface, the expensive leather furniture covered with baby blankets. Sarah's design clients started reaching out. Word had spread that she was available for freelance work again. Small projects at first, logo designs, website mock-ups, things she could do during the baby's naps. Dominic's network helped. His company needed rebranding for a subsidiary. His business partner's wife needed marketing materials. The work was real, not charity, but Sarah knew the connections came from being Mrs. Sutherland. Is this okay? She asked Dominic one evening. They were both covered in spit-up, exhausted from a day of twin infant care. Using your connections for clients? You're using your talent and my network. That's called strategic partnership, also known as marriage. Dominic wiped Daniel's chin. Besides, you're really good. People are going to hire you because of your work, not my name. You haven't even seen my portfolio. I saw the Madison project. That was your design. I know quality when I see it. Sarah felt something warm spread through her chest. Validation, recognition, the feeling of being seen. Marcus finally responded to the divorce papers through his lawyer, a formal letter demanding joint custody, the house they'd planned to buy, and half of Sarah's future earnings. He wants half my earnings? Sarah stared at the document. I made $30,000 last year freelancing. He wants half of that. He wants to punish you, Thomas Reed said. They were meeting in Dominic's home office while the babies napped. This is standard narcissistic behavior in divorce cases. He doesn't care about the money. He cares about control. Well, he can't have it. Sarah's voice was steel. He left me dying in a hospital. He abandoned his children. He's not getting anything. Agreed, Brisain. We're countering with full custody, supervised visitation, and child support of $50,000 per month. Thomas slid another document across the desk. The abandonment is documented. We have hospital records, witness testimony, timeline proof that he was in the Maldives during the emergency. No judge will grant him custody. What about Claire? She threatened to sue for her grandparents' rights. Let her try. You're married to Dominic, living in stable housing, financially secure, and the twins are thriving. She has no case. After Thomas left, Sarah sat in the nursery watching her sons sleep. Lucas in one crib, Daniel in the other, both breathing steadily, growing stronger every day. We're going to be okay, she whispered. Your mama's going to make sure of it. Dominic appeared in the doorway. Talking to yourself or to them? Both. Probably a sign I'm losing it. Or a sign you're a good mother. He came to stand beside her. They're lucky to have you. I'm lucky to have them. And you. Sarah turned to face him. I know I haven't said it enough, but thank you. For all of this. For giving us a chance to rebuild. You're rebuilding yourself. I'm just providing the scaffolding. That night, Sarah laughed for the first time since the hospital. Really laughed. Lucas had grabbed Daniel's nose during tummy time. Daniel sneezed. Lucas startled and made a face. Dominic did a perfect impression of the baby sneeze. And Sarah laughed. It felt strange. Foreign. Like a language she'd forgotten how to speak. But it also felt right. The mediation meeting was scheduled for 3 months after the twins' birth. Sarah insisted on attending, despite Dr. Wells warning her to take it easy. I need to be there, Sarah said. I need to look Marcus in the eye and tell him no. Thomas Reed's office was downtown. Expensive, impressive. The kind of place that announced power before anyone spoke. Marcus arrived with his mother and his lawyer, Gerald Stone. He looked good, tanned, rested, happy. It made Sarah's blood boil. Sarah. Marcus stood, hands extended like they were old friends. You look good. Motherhood agrees with you. Sarah didn't stand, didn't shake his hand. Sit down, Marcus. He sat, surprise flickering across his face. This wasn't the accommodating woman he'd married. This was someone new. My client would like to establish a custody arrangement for his sons, Gerald began. His sons he's never met, Thomas countered. The sons he abandoned during a medical emergency. Mr. Hartwell was dealing with a complicated situation. A beach vacation in the Maldives with his mistress, Sarah interrupted. Let's call it what it was. Claire bristled. Vanessa is not a mistress. They began dating after Marcus left you. He left me unconscious in an intensive care unit while I was giving birth. He was still legally my husband. It was still an affair. Marcus leaned forward. Look, I know I made mistakes, but those are my sons. I have rights. You have rights? Dominic spoke for the first time, his voice quiet but lethal. You haven't paid a single hospital bill. Haven't called once to check on their health. Haven't sent so much as a text asking their names. You have rights? You're not their father, Marcus shot back. You don't get a say. I'm the man who's been there every single night, every feeding, every diaper change, every doctor's appointment. I may not share their DNA, but I'm their father in every way that actually matters. The room crackled with tension. Gerald shuffled his papers. My client is willing to offer generous child support, $10,000 per month, in exchange for joint custody, every other weekend. No, Sarah said flatly, you can't just say no. Watch me. Thomas leaned forward. My client will accept $50,000 per month in child support, zero custody, supervised visitation once per month, contingent upon Mr. Hartwell completing a parenting course and undergoing psychological evaluation. That's extortion, Marcus sputtered. That's ensuring the welfare of 2 premature infants who don't know you and have no bond with you, Thomas corrected. Take it or we go to court. And I promise you, Mr. Hartwell, you don't want us to go to court. Medical abandonment during a life-threatening emergency will destroy you. Claire stood abruptly. Those boys are Hartwells. They have a legacy, a family name. You can't just erase that. Those boys, Sarah said, standing as well, are Sutherlands now. I filed the paperwork last week. Dominic is adopting them. They'll never carry your name or your legacy because you don't deserve them. Silence, complete shock silence. Marcus's face went red. You can't do that. I'm their biological father. You're their sperm donor. Dominic is their father. Marcus turned to Dominic. You son of a... Careful, Dominic said softly. We're in a lawyer's office. Witnesses everywhere. Gerald whispered urgently to Marcus. Sarah couldn't hear the words, but she saw Marcus's shoulders slump in defeat. Fine, Marcus bit out. 50,000 per month. Supervised visitation. But this isn't over. Yes, Sarah said clearly. It is. They left Claire and Marcus in the conference room. Sarah made it to the elevator before her legs started shaking. Dominic steadied her. You did great. I told my mother-in-law her grandchildren would never carry her name. I'm a terrible person. You're protecting your children. That makes you a great person. In the car, Sarah finally let the adrenaline drain away. He looked good, happy, like none of this affected him at all. Because it didn't. Marcus lacks the emotional depth to be affected by consequences. That's the definition of narcissistic personality disorder. You've been reading about it. I needed to understand what you've been dealing with, what patterns to watch for, how to protect you and the boys. Dominic glanced at her. I won't let him hurt you again, Sarah, I promise. Sarah believed him. That evening they brought the twins to the park. 3 months old now, still tiny, but growing. Lucas was alert and curious. Daniel was quieter, more thoughtful. Both perfect. Tell me something, Sarah said as they walked. Why did you really show up at the hospital that night? The truth. Dominic was quiet for a long moment, because at the Madison Project wrap party, Marcus showed up drunk, made a scene, accused you of having an affair with me in front of everyone. You were so embarrassed, so hurt, and I watched you apologize for him, make excuse, smooth everything over. Sarah remembered. I'd forgotten about that night. I haven't. I went home that night and knew I'd made a mistake, letting you marry him, not saying anything. So I set up the alerts, told myself I was just making sure you were safe, but really I was hoping for a second chance. Dominic stopped walking. When that critical case notification came through, I knew. This was my second chance. I wasn't going to waste it. Sarah looked at him, really looked at him. This man who'd rearranged his entire life for her, who'd married her out of convenience but treated her with genuine respect, who was raising her children like they were his own. I'm not ready, she said softly. I know, but maybe someday. Dominic caught her hand, kissed her palm. I'll wait. 6 months into being Mrs. Sutherland, and Sarah barely recognized herself. Morrison Creative Studios, her own design firm, small office downtown, 3 employees, a dozen clients. She was booked 6 months out. Look at you, Becca said, visiting during lunch. CEO, boss lady, making it happen. I'm terrified every single day. That's called having a business. Welcome to entrepreneurship. Sarah's portfolio had grown. Dominic's network had opened doors, but her work kept them open. A rebrand for a major tech company. Marketing materials for a nonprofit. Website design for a new restaurant chain. Real work, real money, real financial independence. She was paying Dominic back. Not everything, that would take years, but she'd insisted on contributing to household expenses. Her name was on the mortgage now too. Legal financial independence meant everything. Have you heard about Marcus? Becca asked carefully. No, and I don't want to. He and Vanessa broke up. Apparently the merger really did fall through. He lost his job, living with Claire now. Sarah felt nothing. Not satisfaction, not vindication, just complete indifference. Good for him, she said neutrally. That's it? Just good for him? What do you want me to say? That I hope he suffers? I did that for months. It was exhausting. Sarah ate her salad. He sends the child support checks, shows up for supervised visitation. The boys don't recognize him. That's consequence enough. When did you get so zen? When I realized my happiness isn't tied to his suffering. I just don't care anymore. And that's the best revenge possible. The twins' first birthday approached. Lucas was walking. Daniel was crawling but preferred to be carried. Both were healthy, hitting all their milestones. The neonatal intensive care unit seemed like a lifetime ago. Sarah planned the party, just close friends, Becca and her family, Thomas Reed, a few clients who'd become friends. Nothing elaborate, cake and presents, enjoy. Dominic bought them a playset for the terrace, professional installation, safety certified, the works. He spent hours assembling it himself anyway, claiming he needed to make sure it was perfect. Sarah watched him from the kitchen window. This billionaire tech CEO on his hands and knees, reading instruction manuals, muttering about Allen wrenches, her husband. Except he wasn't really her husband, not in the ways that mattered. They lived together, raised children together, split household responsibilities, but they still slept in separate rooms, still maintained the boundaries of a marriage of convenience. Sarah wondered when that had started to bother her. That evening, after the twins were asleep, she found Dominic on the balcony. Wine, city lights, the same view as their first night here. "I got the final adoption papers today," Dominic said without preamble. "It's official. Lucas James Sutherland and Daniel Robert Sutherland, legally mine. You've been their father since the beginning. This just makes the paperwork match reality." "Sarah, don't ask if you regret it. I can see the answer on your face every time you look at them." "I'd do it again, 1,000 times." Dominic turned to face her. "No regrets. Not one." They sat in comfortable silence. Sarah thought about the woman she'd been a year ago, pregnant and afraid, abandoned and broken. That woman felt like a stranger now. "We've been married 18 months, Sarah said. "Technically." "What does that mean?" "It means we're married on paper, but we're not. We haven't had sex?" Sarah smiled at his discomfort. "I was going to say consummated the marriage, but sure, that too." "Why haven't we?" "Because you said you weren't ready, and I said I'd wait." Sarah set down her wine glass. "What if I'm ready now?" Dominic went very still. "Sarah, I need you to be sure, because if we cross this line, I'm all in. This stops being a marriage of convenience. This becomes real." "It's been real. We've been lying to ourselves, pretending it wasn't. I've been in love with you for 4 years, since the Madison Project." Dominic's voice was intense. "Since you explained why user interface matters with such passion, I forgot to breathe. But I need to hear you say it." "Say what?" "That you love me. Not that you're grateful, not that you feel obligated, that you actually love me." Sarah stood, took his hands. "I love you. Not because you saved me, not because you're an incredible father to my boys, not because you gave me safety when I had none. I love you because you see me, the real me, messy and broken and rebuilding. You've never tried to fix me or change me or make me smaller. You've just stood beside me, waiting, and I'm done waiting." The kiss wasn't brief, wasn't respectful. It was real. 4 years of waiting, 18 months of pretending, all of it combusting into this moment. They moved inside, to the main bedroom that had always been Sarah's, closed the door against the world, and for the first time, the marriage of convenience became something else entirely. Vanessa Price showed up at Morrison Creative Studios 6 months after the divorce was finalized. Sarah almost didn't recognize her. The blonde bombshell from Marcus's social media photos looked tired, older, humbled. "Sarah, I know I'm the last person you want to see, but what do you want?" Sarah's hand moved toward the phone, ready to call security, "To apologize, and to warn you." Vanessa sat down without invitation. "Marcus played us both. I was the other woman. Then I became the wife. Then I became you. He's seeing someone new now. Same pattern, same cycle. Why are you telling me this?" "Because Claire Hartwell is planning something. She filed a grandparents' rights case. She wants custody of the twins." Sarah's heart stopped. "She can't. She's claiming you're an unfit mother, that you manipulated Marcus, that you trapped Dominic Sutherland into a fraudulent marriage." Vanessa pulled out papers, photocopies of legal documents. "I still have friends at the country club. They talk. Sarah, I'm so sorry for all of it. Marcus made me believe you were this terrible person holding him back. But you weren't. He's just a terrible person. Sarah took the papers, scanned them quickly. Claire was really doing this, suing for custody, claiming Sarah was mentally unstable, financially dependent, manipulative. Will you testify? Sarah asked. If it goes to court? Yes, I'll tell them everything. The affair timeline, the leases, how he abandoned you, how he tried the same manipulation tactics on me. Vanessa stood. You have a good life now. Don't let them take it. After she left, Sarah called Thomas Reed, then Dominic. Then she sat at her desk and tried not to panic. The court hearing was set for 2 weeks later. Sarah wore a navy suit, professional, competent. She'd practiced her testimony with Thomas until she could recite it without crying. The courtroom was smaller than she'd expected. Judge Patricia Howard presided, no nonsense. 50s, known for being fair but tough. Present, Sarah and Dominic, Thomas Reed, Claire and her attorney, Marcus looking uncomfortable, Becca as a character witness, Dr. Wells for medical testimony, and Vanessa, the surprise witness. Claire's attorney went first, painting Sarah as unstable, pointing to the medical emergency as proof of health issues, emphasizing her dependence on Dominic's wealth, suggesting the marriage was fraudulent. Then Thomas dismantled every argument. Dr. Wells testified about the eclampsia, a medical condition that occurs in pregnancy, not a mental health issue, not chronic. Sarah Morrison Sutherland's recovery has been textbook. She's a healthy young woman who survived a life-threatening emergency. Becca testified about their friendship. I've known Sarah for 10 years. She's one of the strongest people I know. She's built a business from scratch. She's raising 2 healthy children. She's not dependent. She's thriving. Vanessa's testimony was the bomb. Marcus Hartwell lied to me about his marriage. He abandoned his pregnant wife during a medical emergency. He's shown no interest in his children beyond avoiding higher child support payments. He's exactly who Sarah said he was. I just wish I'd believed her sooner. Dominic's testimony was quiet but devastating. I love those boys as if they were my own blood. I am their father in every way that matters, and I love their mother. This isn't a marriage of convenience. It never was. Finally, Sarah took the stand. Mrs. Sutherland, Judge Howard said, tell me about your sons. Sarah took a breath. Lucas is fearless. He climbs everything, laughs at everything. He's going to give us heart attacks when he's older. Daniel is thoughtful, quiet. He watches everything before he tries it. They're 18 months old now. They don't remember the neonatal intensive care unit. They don't remember being premature. They just remember being loved. And your business? Morrison Creative Studios. I have 6 employees now. We're in the black. I'm paying back Dominic for the startup costs. I'm financially independent. And your marriage? Your mother-in-law claims it's fraudulent. Sarah looked at Dominic. It started as convenience. I won't lie about that. I needed stability, legal protection, a way to keep my children safe from people who wanted to use them as weapons in a divorce settlement. But it became real because Dominic never made me feel small, never made me feel like I owed him, never made me feel like love was transactional. Judge Howard nodded. Mr. Hartwell, you've attended how many supervised visitations with your children? Marcus shifted. I've been busy with the divorce settlement. I'm up to their settlement. 3. You've attended 3 visitations in 18 months. For 2 children, you claim are your priority. Judge Howard's voice was ice. Mrs. Claire Hartwell, you claim your daughter-in-law is unfit based on what evidence? Claire stood. She trapped my son with a pregnancy. She manipulated him. She's using Mr. Sutherland for his money. She's built a successful business. She's raising 2 healthy children in a stable home. She's married to a man who clearly adores her and those boys. Judge Howard shuffled papers. Your petition is denied. Full custody remains with Sarah Sutherland. Mr. Hartwell's supervised visitation continues once monthly. And Mrs. Claire Hartwell, if you file another frivolous lawsuit, I'll hold you in contempt. The gavel fell. Sarah felt Dominic's hand squeeze hers. They'd won. Not because they'd destroyed Marcus and Claire, but because they'd built something real, something those 2 would never understand. Family. 3 years after that night in the hospital intensive care unit, Sarah stood in her office and looked at the growth forward. Morrison Creative Studios. 20 employees, offices in 2 cities, clients across the country, revenue in the millions. She'd done this, built this, created something from nothing. The twins were almost 4 now, attending a prestigious preschool. Lucas was still fearless. Daniel was still thoughtful. Neither remembered Marcus as anything other than the man who visits sometimes. They called Dominic Dada without prompting. Natural, easy, right. Marcus attended his monthly supervised visitations maybe half the time. He'd send gifts to compensate, expensive toys the boys didn't need. Sarah donated them quietly. No point making it a fight. Claire had stopped trying. The court defeat had broken something in her. She sent birthday cards. Formal, distant. Sarah accepted them for the boys' sake, but didn't force a relationship. Knock, knock. Dominic appeared in her office doorway. Ready for lunch? They had a standing date every Thursday, the one day they both took 2 hours away from work to be together. Ready, let me grab my bag. They walked to a nearby cafe. Nothing fancy, just good food and conversation. The boys want to go to the aquarium this weekend, Dominic said. Apparently Daniel is obsessed with octopuses now. Octopi. Gesundheit, Sarah laughed. She did that a lot now. Laughed easily. Smiled freely. The woman who'd made herself small and quiet felt like a character in someone else's story. I was thinking, Dominic said carefully, maybe it's time we renewed our vows, for real this time, with family and friends, the ceremony we never had. Sarah set down her coffee. You want a real wedding? I want to stand in front of people we love and promise to spend my life with you, again, but without the legal strategy and emergency circumstances, just us, choosing each other. Yes, the word came out before Sarah could overthink it. Yes, I want that. They planned the wedding for 6 months out, small, intimate, just the people who mattered. The ceremony would be in the park where Dominic had proposed, actually proposed, not the let's get married for legal reasons version. On one knee, with a ring, the whole thing. Sarah's design business continued growing. She hired a new creative director, promoted her first employee to partner, started turning down work because they were fully booked. Financial independence felt like flying. The wedding day arrived with perfect weather, fall in the city, leaves turning gold, crisp air, blue sky. Sarah wore a real wedding dress this time. Ivory silk, simple, elegant. The twins were ring bearers. Lucas dropped the rings immediately. Daniel picked them up carefully. Perfect. Becca was maid of honor. Thomas Reed was best man. Vanessa came as a guest, single and rebuilding her own life. Even Dr. Wells attended. Marcus wasn't invited. He didn't ask to be. The officiant wasn't Judge Howard this time. Just a friend who'd gotten ordained online. The vows weren't about legal strategy or emergency custody. They were about love. I promise to stand beside you, Sarah said, her voice steady. Not to save you or fix you or change you, but to see you, to support you, to build a life with you that's messy and beautiful and real. I promise to wait, Dominic said, for as long as it takes, for whatever comes next, because you're worth waiting for. You've always been worth waiting for. They kissed, the twins cheered, everyone applauded. It was perfect. Not the wedding Sarah had imagined at 26 when she'd married Marcus, in a production designed to impress his mother. This was smaller, more meaningful, actually about love instead of appearances. At the reception, Marcus called. Sarah saw his name on her phone and almost didn't answer, but curiosity won. Hello, Marcus. I saw the photos on social media. You got remarried. He sounded bitter. We renewed our vows. We've been married for 3 years. Right, of course. Well, congratulations, I guess. Thank you. Silence, then. I made a mistake. Leaving you. Leaving them. I know that now. Sarah felt nothing. Not anger, not vindication. Just complete indifference. I hope you figure things out, Marcus. I really do. But it's not my problem anymore. She hung up, blocked his number for the final time, went back to her wedding reception. Dominic found her on the balcony, city lights below, stars above. Everything okay? Perfect. Sarah leaned into him. Everything's absolutely perfect. 5 years after that night in the hospital intensive care unit, Sarah woke to small hands patting her face. Lucas, 6 years old now, fearless and bright. Mama, Mama, wake up. Saturday. 5 more minutes, Sarah mumbled. Dada's making pancakes. Come on. Sarah let herself be dragged from bed. Dominic was indeed in the kitchen, covered in flour, attempting to flip pancakes while Daniel stood on a stool, helping. Morning, beautiful, Dominic said, kissing her. Coffee's ready? You're my favorite person. I'm your only person. That too. Morrison Creative Studios had expanded to 3 cities, 50 employees, millions in annual revenue. Sarah had been featured in business magazines, given keynote speeches. She'd built an empire from nothing. But this morning, pancakes and coffee and her family. This was everything. The twins were thriving. Lucas was in 1st grade, already reading at a 3rd grade level. Daniel preferred art class, drawing elaborate pictures of octopi in space. Both were happy, healthy, loved beyond measure. Marcus had moved across the country. He sent birthday gifts sometimes, called twice a year. The boys were polite but distant. They knew who their father was, and it wasn't the man who'd abandoned them. Claire had passed away 2 years ago, lung cancer. She'd left a letter for the twins. Sarah had put it in a box for when they were older. Maybe they'd read it, maybe they wouldn't. Their choice. We got a call from the adoption agency, Dominic said casually. Too casually, Sarah looked up from her coffee. And? They have a little girl, 18 months. Mother died in childbirth. Father's unknown. Foster system isn't working out. Miss Dominic flipped a pancake. They asked if we'd consider. Yes. Sarah didn't need to think about it. Absolutely yes. You don't want to discuss it? What's to discuss? We have space, we have resources, we have love. Sarah looked at their sons. Lucas, Daniel, how would you feel about a baby sister? Lucas whooped. Daniel nodded seriously. Settled then, Dominic said, grinning. 3 months later, they brought Sophia Elena Sutherland home. 18 months old, dark curls, huge brown eyes. She cried for 3 days straight. Then she climbed into Sarah's lap and fell asleep. Welcome home, baby girl, Sarah whispered. People asked Sarah how she survived. The abandonment, the betrayal, the custody battles, the narcissistic abuse recovery. They wanted a formula, a secret. There is no secret, Sarah would tell them. Just this, I decided I was worth fighting for. And I found someone who agreed. Marcus's abandonment had felt like the end of the world. But it had been the beginning. The moment Sarah stopped making herself small, stopped accepting less than she deserved, stopped believing love required suffering. Morrison Creative Studios now employed 75 people, women supporting women, creating opportunities, building something meaningful. The twins were 8 now. Sophia was 4. All 3 called Dominic Dada and Sarah Mama. No confusion, no questions, just family. Marcus had remarried, someone young, again. Sarah sent a congratulations card, meant it. His life wasn't her problem anymore. The opposite of love isn't hate, Sarah told a podcast interviewer. It's indifference, and I am gloriously indifferent to Marcus Hartwell. He's not part of my story anymore. He's just the guy who cleared the path for the right person to find me. That night, Sarah stood in the doorway of the kids' room, all 3 sleeping peacefully. Lucas sprawled across his bed, Daniel curled up tight, Sophia clutching her stuffed octopus. What are you thinking? Dominic asked, wrapping his arms around her waist. That my life didn't go according to plan, and I'm so grateful it didn't. Me too. They stood in comfortable silence. Outside, the city hummed. Inside, their family slept, safe, loved, whole. This wasn't the life Sarah had imagined at 26. It was infinitely better, because sometimes the worst betrayal leads to the best beginning. Sometimes being abandoned means being set free. Sometimes losing everything means gaining yourself. And sometimes the marriage that starts as convenience becomes the love story that changes everything.